People, hey, this is Bill's Garage channel. I'm Bill the Mechanic. Today we're going to look at a 2006 Subaru Legacy that is repetitively clunking after braking, and it's a pain. Okay, finding clunks. Stage one is you place a jack under the car, like this one here. You place a jack stand that I promise you is there. I wouldn't lie, underneath the car as well to make sure it's safe. And maybe put the e-brake on. Couldn't hurt, as long as you're working on the front end, not the back end. E-brake's in the back. Do you know that? You don't know that? Don't do any of this. Just let your brother-in-law do it. He's a big guy. He knows all kinds of stuff. Just let him. Anyway, so the first thing you want to do after you've jacked it up is give the wheel a little wiggle. You grab the wheel from either side and just try to wiggle it back and forth. And what you'd want to hear is a nice solid or loud clunk, 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 clunk like that. You're going to hear a little something, so don't let that fool you. Because there's a lot of things that are moving when you turn this wheel. The steering rack is moving in and out, and that's got to have some kind of give to it. So there's been plenty of times I'm sitting there like, wait a minute, I feel a disturbance. But it was just the steering rack coming in and out. So if you don't feel anything significant during that, then don't worry about it. Then try to wiggle it. Would this be vertically? Try to wiggle it vertically, and that's when you're putting your fingers underneath this wheel, so you better have a jack stand under here. If you didn't listen to me, again, you shouldn't be doing this. So if you don't feel anything there, sometimes if you had it up in the air on a lift and you could put your shoulder, I used to put my shoulder underneath the car and go like this when I had a different kind of lift, when I had a job. Who needs one of those, am I right? The other thing you want to do is, if you can, get in front of the tire and try to push it forward and backward, and that's especially if you are hitting the brake and it has a little clunk. Like every time you tap the brake, that's usually because when you're tapping the brakes, you're coming to a stop. Everything's kind of going like this, so that's when there's usually a bushing or something that's allowing a clunk going front to back. So that's my rundown. I didn't include the sway bar links because I have to go to phase 2, and we'll get to that in phase 2. Alrighty, here we are at phase 2, and the first thing I noticed under the car is that the sway bar links, the boots are torn open, but that doesn't really mean anything yet. I've never seen a sway bar link sound quite like this, where it's a repetitive, going straight down the road with no bumps, just going clunk, 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 clunk once it starts. Now, anything is possible on cars. Remember that. The same failure can sound like 5 different things, depending on what kind of car you're working on or how particularly it's failing. So don't ever think you know exactly what something sounds like, because you don't. It can always sound a little different than what you experience, particularly across different vehicles. So that's them. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to punch those bad boys and see if they move at all. But let's take a quick look at the rest of the suspension here. There's a bushing here, but I can't see much in there to determine if it's bad. Sometimes you can get a peek right in there and see something, but I don't see anything that jumps out at me. And then here's our bushings in the back. This one's definitely cracked. There you go, that's nice and clear, but I don't know. I just don't see that causing our issue. Not yet. And I need to prove it. I need to move it with my own hand and feel it and see it move. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking to send somebody to jail, and you need proof. This one, though, look at this bad boy. That doesn't look good. This could be it. I mean, I don't like this, but I'm not convinced. I need to be convinced. Moving on. The ball joint in the front. That looks fine. Under here, once again, nothing. This is over on the driver's side. And these are the things I'm looking for, is suspension stuff. Now, the only other thing is, there you go, that's nice and clear. That's torn open. So we're really going to focus on anything that doesn't look right. We're going to try to move it, push it, punch it to get it to have the play in it that I think is leading towards this clunk. The only other thing I'm considering is maybe the axle, because it once it starts, it's like clunk, 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 clunk as the wheel is turning. It seems like that I'm going to look into that. So I guess to look into that, I'm going to, see. But you can get fooled by this. When I take this axle and I push it in and out, sorry for wiggling the camera, but I definitely feel something. But that's got a lot of parts that are supposed to move in there. So again, you could trick yourself into thinking there's a problem that's not there. Oh, but that feels excessive. Hold on. Hold the phone. Oh! Okay. So, this axle seems to me to have too much play up and down. And that's why I think once it gets going, as the wheel's turning, once it starts, it's clunk, 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 clunk. And also when I hit the gas or hit the brake, that kicks it off or causes it. But here's the thing. Sometimes you got to start with what you know is bad. Now, we found a lot of stuff on this car. It's a 06. So sometimes on these cars, you got to start with things that you see are wrong and go from there. So we're gonna replace this axle because there's play in it and this boot's torn open, and we're gonna start with this, and we'll go from there. I'll let you know if this was the problem. I guess I gotta show you how to do it now. Oh, you're lucky we're friends. I did that wrong. Also, real quick, what I mentioned about beating up sway bar links. So one quick and easy way to check a sway bar link is to take the sway bar with the palm of your hand and just give it a tap or try to shake it up and down. You're looking for play, wiggling, thumping. You can take the sway bar link itself and just try to push it, wiggle it around, and if it doesn't move, then you're probably pretty good. But again, these boots being torn open, you know, I would want to replace them soon. The other thing I didn't mention, which is usually a phase 1 thing, is the tie rod here, which has a ball joint right there. So, you know, that's connected to the steering rack, which you can't see. Oh, maybe you can. You know, that's the steering rack there. So, like I said, it'll always make a little noise when you're wiggling this wheel from the outside, like I showed you earlier. But if you do feel a clunk, it's kind of a two-man thing. You're going to want to put your hand on the tie rod and then have your buddy wiggle the wheel, and then you should be able to really feel that clunking in the tie rod. And while you're in there, to try to verify that that's where it's coming from, let that person keep doing that, and you'll put your hand here, you'll put your hand here, and on here, and just see anywhere else, wherever it feels the strongest, that's where your front end clunk is coming from. And most of this stuff applies to the rear too. It's just today I'm focusing on the front because that's where my clunk is. Okay, so to get this axle out, here's what it's going to take. You got a 32mm nut here. A lot of times on the axle nuts, they'll bend them in like you can see on that little tab there. When you're taking them off, just hammer away and that'll come right out. But when you're putting it on, you're going to want to make another indentation just like that when you're finished. And all things being as good as they could be, you get that exact spot right back over there and put it on. But you're going to hammer that thing on as hard as you can with whatever you got. Then you're going to take the brake caliper and caliper bracket off. So those two bolts there are the caliper bracket bolts. And that's the caliper bolt right there. Caliper bolt is a 14, and I'm going to say those are 19, but let me check for you. Yes, those caliper bracket bolts are 19. Then, this is one of the easier ones. The knuckle here is held on with just these two bolts. And so in most cases, once you take this nut out and push the axle through at least a little bit so it's kind of free to slide in and out of the hub there, you'll take these two out, you'll pull the knuckle forward, and you usually can wiggle the axle out from there once you pull it free of the trans. Or transaxle in this case. Breaking the axle loose. So it's sort of, see them grooves there? See how groovy that is? It's kind of notched in there in them grooves, and they like to hang on to it and not let go. So I'm going to put some PB Blaster in there because this thing I know is going to want to hang on. I got a little pan under there to catch the mess because I'm going to go hog wild on it. And just squirt her down, make her messy, just like that. Don't be shy. And then I'm going to put my nut back on. And the reason for that is because I want to hit this thing with a hammer, but I don't want to mess up the threads on it and mushroom the end of this thing out. So for the first couple taps, I'm going to thread it almost flush to get as much of those threads on there as I can. And then I'm just going to whack this thing with this hammer a couple times. Now I'm not going to record that because it's going to be loud, but I'll show you in a minute. So the ABS sensor wire is, on the front of the shock here, or strut. And it really doesn't put stress on it as you're taking the 2 bolts out of the shock. But the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to try to wiggle this axle out the back end. So I'm really going to be pulling on this knuckle here. And I don't want to put stress on there because it's not pulling on it now. But I'm feeling like the right thing to do is to just take this out. So I think if I just take out this 12mm bolt that holds the wire in place, it's going to give me plenty of slack, to do this. So my axle is almost all the way out of the hub. And at this point I feel comfortable tapping it the little bit that I'll need to push it through the rest of the way. So I might take a smaller hammer, or maybe, if you have it like a chisel bit or a punch, and just hit a smaller hammer against that just to knock it through the rest of the way. But then after that, it is going to be a fight. I opted to push the shock towards the front of the car, and then I'm going to try to push the axle back out while pulling this away, which doesn't go much further than this, and just kind of wrestle this thing out of there. And then I'll get to how we get that bad boy out of there in just a second. This will be an unflattering angle. So let's see if I can point to it in reverse. Right there. There's your axle. Double chin. Okay. I was out picking up the power of doing. So, of course, I was at Home Depot and got a hair situation. And I have this set of impact screwdrivers that I got. They're from Milwaukee. I recall there was a beverage that claimed to be Milwaukee's best, but when I found this, I decided that was debatable. It's about $10 for these 2 guys, and they're pretty strong, and they're lifetime guaranteed. So I keep breaking them, and Home Depot keeps replacing them. So yeah, they have like a metal core through it. So, if you try to hit a regular screwdriver with a plastic handle with a hammer, you're going to ruin it. This, you'll ruin it after a good long while. So I recommend this. So what I'm going to try to do, I think this is going to be easy. Usually, I'll get in on an angle and try to knock the axle out, but on this one, it's tight and there's really no room to do that. So what I'm going to try to do is brace it. I don't know if you can see that. You get it. You get it. And I'm going to try to just pop this out. Look at that. I mean, that wasn't scripted. Like, we did that together. That was me and you. And let's try it again a little bit. There it is. There it goes. Don't let it fall. So if you're on the ground, this isn't going to be that bad for you. You just reach under there as far as you can with jack stands. I told you. And then pop it out. So what you'll find on axles is they got this little ring there. If you ever get an axle without that ring, send it back. Don't mess with this ring. It's a nightmare. Just get one that has it on there. So that is the removal of the axle. When you're putting it in, you're just going to try to rotate it slightly as it's going in this hole till you feel these splines here, which I call them grooves. They're splines. What's the difference? Till you feel them start to catch, and then you're going to firmly but not crazily just pop that in. There's no sense in me showing you because it's just a feeling. You'll know it when you feel it. All right. Now what the heck? I'll try to show you. Again, you're going to probably be on the ground. Oh, that almost fell. Did you see that? But yeah, I'll try to see if this can be conveyed to you. So you're going to want to try to go nice and straight. So I'm just rotating just a little bit until I feel like it's locked in. And a good way to know that it is that it either won't turn anymore because my other wheel's on the ground. If you had the whole front end jacked up, you could probably spin this and watch the other wheel turn. So once you get it, you see there's a little wiggle there. I don't know if you can tell, but oh, that's not going to work. Not from this angle, because you really do got to be pretty firm with it. But again, anytime you start pushing, just double check that it feels like it's locked in. There. Did you see it? Or was my head in the way? It was my bad hair. I was going like this. Well, I'm not taking it back out, so whatever. There it is. It's back in. So we put the axle in the transmission side, and now we're going to go ahead and pop it into the hub. A little bit of lube couldn't hurt. And this is the same deal. It's splined, so you got to match up the splines. And to make sure they're matched up, we're going to do a little turning and probably see this rotor hub all just turn with the axle as we go. And that's how you know they're locked together. When you turn the axle, the other stuff will turn. Or one won't turn because the other can't. So we're going to put a little of this on there. This part's really not that tricky. But it is a fight. So wiggle that bad boy in there. So don't be shy to do a little name calling. But it's a family show, so you know, I won't do that. There we go. So it's sort of there. I'm gonna pop it in. Now this one just basically went all the way for me. But a lot of times what I'll do, and I forgot to mention when I was talking about all this stuff about saving the threads on here and you know making sure we reuse this nut and tap it back in, that's all in instances when you're reusing an old axle, like if you're taking the axle out for some other repair. But in this regard, I probably could have beat it out of there without this on there, not worrying about it. But it's a good habit to protect the old parts, because you never know in the home stretch of a job if something's going to go wrong or not fit, and then suddenly you got to start all over. And you know, assuming you're a person at home doing this in your own car, if you get in a situation where you can't put the new part in and you wrecked the old part, well, now you got no transportation. So it's just always just a habit of mine to not destroy the old parts if I don't have to, you know? Unless I'm 100% sure, which you really can't be. You really can't. So anyway, but what I was going to say is sometimes if the axle's not going all the way in, you know, as far as I think it should, then I'll put the nut on and just use the nut to pull it the rest of the way. But you really have to make sure it's splined right. And once again, to make sure it's splined right, see that? See how that rotor's turning just a little bit, as much as it can? That's how I know that the rotor and the axle and the hub and rotor are all fit together just right. You know, and I can even spin the rotor and feel the axle move as much as it can. So that's it. For now, I'm going to leave it just like that, and then I'm not going to record this, but I'm going to go ahead and take the hub, put it. Well, maybe I will. You can stay with me. We can hang out for this. You'll probably just see my back. I could edit it out. See what happens. I mean, you really can't see. I can't see if you can see because I got a light in my face. Whatever. Bear with me. setup. I hit my shoulder, I bumped my finger, but I got it. So I put it under that bushing that's towards the front of the car. You know, this control arm is a Y shape. The top of the Y that's towards the front of the car, you stick it under there, it's got to be a long pry bar. And I put this under my armpit because I'm a one-man show. And I just push down on this, hurt myself a couple times, and wiggled it as I try to push the bolt in so it can find its way. There we go. That's how I did that. Let me show you. Here is the setup. The pry bar went right under there. And then I was able to leverage this down to get these two bolts back in, because once I took those two bolts out, the thing hopped up, which was good because it didn't hop down and crush me or hurt me or anything like that, but it made it a pain in the butt. But that's how I got that back in. And now we're really in the home stretch. We're talking, I left the caliper bracket on. I didn't mention that yet, but that didn't have to come off. That was silly for me to say. It's just the caliper, putting the nuts back on the back of these, tighten this up, put the wheel on, and test drive it. And that's it. So I'm going to do all that, and then hopefully you'll see me smiling in a Subaru. So when you're going back together, the new nut, you should take a screwdriver where you see this little divot in the end of the axle, take a screwdriver to the outside of the nut, hit it with a hammer, and make an indent there. And that prevents the nut from coming loose, even if you were too much of a sissy to tighten it up enough. You see this? It's fixed. Wait, what's that? I'm just kidding. Yeah, so if you are in a Subaru Legacy or any other car, and after you hit the brakes, or maybe after a little bump, if you hear a repetitive clunk that seems to sound like it's going along with the rotation of the wheel, then it's probably your axle. They can fail in different ways, though. The outboard, I guess you would say, part of the axle can click when you're making a sharp turn, but this is the part of the axle that stays relatively straight in comparison. And wow, that's a lot of sun in my eyes. And yeah, well, there you go. This was my third and final video for my first week making videos. I did one on cooking. I did one where I made some pierogi with broccoli and kielbasa. I did another on gaming where I put together my new arcade level up Street Fighter at-home arcade. It's something that does not roll off the tongue. And I did this axle, this repetitive clunk fix for the 06 Subaru. So I'm actually super excited. I'm having a really good time. Stay tuned for a build battle. Or not build battle, that's Minecraft. Stay tuned for a video battle that I did with Ollie the Wolfo, who happens to also be my wonderful daughter. And please keep watching. If you know me personally, thank you for watching, and comment with me. Let's talk. If you don't know me, do that more. Even more, I want you to do that. I would love to talk to strangers. No, that's not the lesson I would want to teach Wolfo. Just hit me up. Let's have fun.